Eremos is more than a name. It's a way of life. It's our sanctuary, our escape from the noise, and our connection to the deeper meaning of our lives. It's about finding joy in the outdoors, seeking growth, and leaving the world a better place than we found it. Welcome to Elevate and Explore, a podcast where we dive into the beauty of nature, self-discovery, and the endless possibilities that come with living intentionally. Welcome to our journey. Hello, everybody. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Ryan.
And welcome to the Elevate and Explore podcast. Tonight we have with us a very special guest, Kam Knight. I met him back in July out in Salt Lake City. I've spoken with a few times. He's a very interesting person. Has a lot of cool different things going on. So thank you for joining us, Kam.
Thank you for having me, Aaron and Ryan. I'm really happy to be here.
Absolutely.
So I'll
this
just
is one of
dive
the
in.
first guests that we've both actually had some time to talk to before having a podcast episode.
Yeah. And it's actually been great working with both of you guys. And I love seeing how far you guys have come.
Well, thank you. So yes, continue. Who is Kam Knight?
So I'll dive in. My name is Kam Knight. I'm a mentor, international speaker, and author of a dozen books in the area of mental, physical, and emotional performance. And now I talk about a concept called internal resistance, which answered a question I had my whole life, which is, why is it if I want to do something, I know what to do, I know how to do it, and I have the motivation and desire to do it, but for one reason or another, I can or don't do it. And I think it's a question that plagues a lot of us. And over the last 15 to 20 years, it actually was always on my mind. Every time I felt stuck, I wondered why. Why can't I get stuff done? Why do I keep spinning my wheels? Why don't I just do this dang thing so I can get the result that I want? And what I realized is a part of our brain designed to hold us back, and it's actively working to hold us back. And I call this part resistance, and it's a brick wall that we hit anytime that we want to do something, but we can't, no matter how much we want to do it. And so that's really the direction I've kind of gone from what I had been doing before.
Cool. I've worked with you a little bit, and one of the things you helped me uncover was, I found I had a lot of fear holding me back, which I could never. It was very interesting once I came to that conclusion that there was a lot of things that I was scared of that were holding me back. What is a common theme that you see people struggling with that's holding them back from achieving the dreams, achieving what they really want to do? Is there a common thing?
So what's kind of interesting is that there is no commonality as much as it seems like there would be. And that's because the human brain is extremely and fascinatingly complex. In fact, a lot of physicists and scientists consider the brain to be the pinnacle of complexity. And because it is so complex, there's so many reasons and causes for resistance. And it's really, in a lot of ways, unique to the individual based on their past experiences and past challenges that they've experienced, as well as how they were raised. And, even when we kind of dove into your unconscious and uncovered some of the resistance, although there was fear, behind that fear, the causes were kind of unique to you.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found in this work is that anytime we have a want or desire, that desire gets filtered through this part of the brain, which I call resistance, using a whole host of criteria. And if our desire is not in line with any of the criteria, it will prevent action. And there are many criteria it goes through. So what I've found is there's at least about 25 to 30 criteria that the brain is evaluating. Everything from our beliefs, whether what we're trying to do goes against our comfort zone, our self-image and identity, our our core needs and wants, authority issues, how sensitive a person is to pain. So the more pain a mistake creates, the more resistance they'll experience. And then there are certain things that are kind of unique to where a person grows up. So I didn't mention this, but I've traveled to over 100 countries. And in traveling to 100 countries, I have noticed very like peculiarities about different cultures and different demographics. And there's something that's very interesting that goes on here in the US. And that thing is everyone here is trying to be different. Everyone and their mothers, whether it's by wearing different clothes, different shoes, having a different diet, or watching a different show. And it's actually ingrained into our media because it's a guy that's different that often gets the attention, success, and the girl. And it's also in our advertisements. Advertisements are trying to convince us to be different by buying product. And so if over time we start to see ourselves as different from the norm, the brain makes it really hard to do anything that will be perceived the norm. So even if it is helpful or useful, we can't do it because it prevents us from being different. And if we are tied to that image or identity of being different, then it makes it really difficult to stick with the things that might be perceived as normal, even though those things could be helpful and useful to us. And
So in
go ahead.
question, so in 100 different countries, do you see a lot of the more kind of desiring to be like everybody else rather than be different?
I wouldn't say there is a desire, but there isn't this overtness of, hey, I'm different. I don't watch Netflix because since everyone's watching Netflix, I don't watch Netflix, I'm different. Everyone's watching the show, I don't watch the show, I'm different. Everyone is listening to this type of music, I don't do that because I'm different. You don't necessarily see that. But at the same time, you don't see the opposite where we're trying to all be the same. It's just that there is a lot more of it. In certain cultures, there's more of it, and there's certain cultures, there's a lot less of it.
Interesting. So I know a lot of times people, want to grow and they're scared of being different. But in my mind, I feel like to be successful, you got to be a little different. You got to think outside of the box. Is that a common theme you see people struggle with, that they're afraid to be different? They're afraid to get out of that box, afraid of the judgment?
Yeah. So you bring up actually a very good point. Um, Different isn't bad. It's actually good to be different because in certain situations, especially in business, it helps to be different and to stand out. So people could see that you're offering something that is different in a higher value. And so different isn't necessarily a bad thing. It it becomes bad when it actually hinders us. So when we are going out of our way, putting in more effort than necessary to be different, then it can be a challenge for ourselves. So a lot of times when people create this persona where they're different, where they don't follow the norm, or they don't follow what could get them results much quicker because they're trying to be different. Because in a lot of respects, being different takes a lot of energy, but then requires a lot of time. A great example would be if somebody thinks that they're different because they dress differently. So now they got to go out of their way to find clothes that is different and that does make them stand out. And they put in all this effort and time that could be used for something that could help them move forward. So that's a really big thing. And then also the challenge, there is a challenge where some people who maybe they might have low self-esteem and self-worth, and the voice in their head is saying, well, I can't act too out of the norm because people might think I am too out there, and it creates too much pain for them to be different. So they are trying to assimilate. And for them, it is a challenge because unfortunately, a lot of people's habits and behaviors are not very useful and helpful and conducive to growing. I think both of you guys have experienced that very recently as you guys are growing. Majority of the people, they're watching a lot of media, their conversations aren't very useful, or anything that's gonna really help people take the next step in their life. And so when we're around people who aren't really growing and the brain feels like, oh, we need to assimilate with them just so we don't be different, then it can create a challenge for such a person. And for them, it is really hard because a lot of their mental energy is focused on trying to make sure that they're liked and accepted. And in order to do that, they have to, in some ways, assimilate to the people around them. And again, unfortunately, if the people around them are not healthy or they're not growing, then it can create a challenge.
Yeah, you become the common denominator of the people you surround yourself with.
Yeah, more or less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd just like to go back a little bit and, throughout your life, how did you get into this line of work? What was your interest? What were you doing, 10, 15 years ago? And, what brought you into this line of work?
Yeah. So as far back as I can remember, I've been a fairly driven individual. And it's kind of hard not to be living in this culture because there is so much personal development content. There's podcasts, there's so many personal development books, and a lot of people are working on themselves, whereas in other places, it's not so much. And so growing up, I've always wanted to do more and have more and be more in life. And although I've had my fair share of success, I felt like the success was much more difficult or stressful than it needed to be. And like I said, I always wondered, why is it if I want to do something and I know what to do and I have the motivation, I can't do it. So as I was growing up, I had a desire to do well in high school, go get into a good college, and then get a good job. And again, although I had my fair share of success, I didn't really hit the mark, although I still did okay. And then after I graduated, I started coming across personal development books. And a lot of it kind of talked about the inner workings of the mind. And for me, it was just fascinating. Some people like it because it helps explain why they're struggling or what they could do to get to the next level. And that was the case for me in a lot of ways, but also it was just fascinating. Like I just enjoyed learning about it. And the more I learned about it, the more I just was drawn to it. It's kind of like how maybe television show or movie is for some people. They just get fascinated and really engaged. And for me, television and movies and a lot of mainstream music didn't do that for me, but personal development did. But what I realized is that a lot of personal development, especially back then, stayed very surface level. And the reason I say back then is because back then there weren't a lot of people in the field. You had some big players such as Tony Robbins and Michael Hyatt and these guys, and they, in my opinion, created content for the mainstream. And anytime you're kind of creating content for a wide audience, it tends to be watered down. And so I thought it was good, but it fell short in a lot of ways in its application. I felt like I needed to bring in a lot more insight, and I went through a lot more trials and tribulations in getting it to work. And so I felt like there was a gap in the industry, and I thought I could fill that gap. And that's how I kind of got into writing the books and doing the things I did. And I was really lucky because early on I got a lot of positive feedback, which reinforced that I was on the right track. And the reason I say this is because when we're doing something new or when we're kind of going against what the mainstream is saying, it can be difficult. It can feel like, do I know what I'm talking about? Does this make sense? Are people going to
Kind of like
resonate?
an imposter syndrome at some
Yes.
stages where you just, and I think I've even talked to you about it, but it's like, I have this goal, I'm competent in this arena, I can
Yeah.
do this, but I tell myself 150 different ways why I shouldn't be doing it at all, and I'm not the person for it. I think I tell Aaron this probably every other week, but
Yeah.
it's more exhausting than physical labor.
I deal
Yeah.
with it myself as well. Who am I? What are my credentials to be able to speak about the things I'm talking about? Who the heck am I? Why would anybody listen to me?
Exactly. So 100% imposter. And even though you all have the experience, it still comes up and it does limit us. And I would say it did slow my progress because I did feel like, who am I to say this? And there's plenty of people who are also going to say it because back then when I would tell people, hey, I'm writing a book or I'm doing this, I didn't have that level of success that I do now. So I did hear it from other people like, well, who are you to say it? And so they added to it, which is why I am grateful that I did get the positive feedback early on that was good motivation to continue doing it. Now, that doesn't mean that I didn't have my trials and tribulations
Sure.
because I still got, when you publish a book, people do comment, people do leave reviews, and I did get not the best reviews that would question my resolve, but it was an opportunity to kind of work through it.
Mm-hmm.
As somebody who, I think you coin yourself with your courses as unlocking your mind or unlocking your potential. And let's dive deep into, I can't remember exactly how you rephrased it, but
Internal resistance.
Your
Yeah.
internal resistance, but you also call it, it's like your inner mind, your subconscious mind.
Yeah, the unconscious mind. Yeah.
Or unconscious rather. So as you've learned how to deal with this, do you have anything currently that sometimes you still struggle with despite knowing how to kind of work through some of these things?
Yeah. So what's really important to understand is even though we can get a lot of feedback, the way the brain works, it puts more weight on the negative than the positive.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something I hear quite a lot, especially from people who are well-known authors. So as an author, do get to meet some higher level authors and get to kind of hear what goes on for them internally. But even well-known and extremely successful authors, they have a hard time receiving feedback and criticism. There are some authors that won't even read their own reviews. They actually have someone else read it because even though 99 people can say what they're doing is great, the one person who says it's not good, it hurts, it affects them. And I I can't say that I'm above that either because although I've gone over I think about 10,000 ratings on Amazon now, when I still get the negative review, it's like, am I on the right path? Do I know what I'm doing? And what helps me to know is that it's not the questioning that comes up, it's not actually me. It's actually a part of my brain that is designed to focus on the negative over the positive. And if we're not careful and if we lead down that voice, it can really hinder our progress. So it helps to understand one, a lot of times when we do get this imposter that comes up, one level deeper to the imposter is fraud. So people whose imposter syndrome is really strong, they actually feel like a fraud. Like they feel like they're doing something wrong and that they're gonna get found out. And that it's not their voice. It's a part of their voice that is trying to help them make sure that what they're doing is right or that they stay on the straight and narrow, but it's not something that they should actually give full weight to, if that makes sense. Yeah.
It is fascinating how the concept of how negative comments can stick with us. And
Yeah.
like you said, you'll hear 99 great ones, and then that one, like there's some negative comments I can think of from freaking elementary school that still stick with me to this day. And those negative things just, no matter how good we can get our mindset, they still are there.
They're
And
still there. And the brain
wild.
puts so much weight on it, where if we're not careful, we can allow that part to control our decisions and actions and really slow our progress. And
I'm glad you
again,
said that.
yeah,
I'm glad you said that. Just the other day, I was thinking about it. It's like somebody said, I'm proud of you, and I should receive that. I should be just absolutely glorified because I heard that. But then it takes like 10,000 I'm proud of you to equal the weight of one you suck.
Yeah, it does. It literally does. And the science, the psychology, they all back it up. So it may not necessarily be 10,000, but depending on the person, it can be literally. And like I said, I have over 10,000 ratings on Amazon. Fortunately, majority of them are 4 and 5 stars. But when those 1 stars do come through, at least in the past, it felt like a dagger. A dagger to the chest and to the heart.
Mhm.
I've gotten to the point where it doesn't affect me as much, and I will actually look at that review logically, because a lot of people are just angry people, and they just want to say negative things because they're just upset. They don't like where they're at and things of that nature. But some people do have a legitimate reason for why they're saying what they're saying, and it's important to differentiate that, because the ones who are just angry, you don't want to let them get to you. You can just try to more or less just pass it off that they're just upset. It's more about them and not you. The reason you want to differentiate is because the ones who are saying something because they truly feel it, there's an opportunity to grow there. And one of the reasons my books are doing well isn't because I wrote the book and I published it. I would be reading these comments and seeing what people were saying, and they were telling me what they wanted in the book. And so I used their reviews to improve my book. And as I was growing and I was getting the feedback, I was implementing to my book, and my books grew as I grew. And so I feel like that's why at this point they're doing a lot better than they may have in the past.
Yeah, sometimes
really
that negative
good,
feedback. Go ahead, Ryan.
You can continue.
Sometimes that negative feedback can help. I'm finding that, I'll upload my videos to Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and YouTube. I've been getting some interesting comments. Like you said, some I get are just, I can definitely differentiate that. Some are just from people who are just down in life and just want to say something negative to somebody.
Yeah.
And like today, I had one who was actually some constructive criticism. They said that my videos sound like I just sound like ChatGPT, even though all my videos, it's all straight from the heart.
Yeah.
And I was watching it and overanalyzing, like, what could I potentially do different? Is he right? Is there anything actually right with what he's saying? And instead of taking it to heart and being like, this is terrible, try and actually get some growth out of it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of opportunities. In fact, there's something I call scaling rejection, which is rejection hurts. It's painful. And as Ryan and you and Aaron, you mentioned, like, even though we get a lot of positive feedback, that one negative feedback really hurts.
Mm-hmm.
But if we can get enough rejection over time, it doesn't hurt enough. It doesn't hurt as much. And you get to a point where it kind of just rolls right off of you. And that's the kind of area you want to be, where there isn't that sting. You hear it, and if it is meant to hurt you, it rolls right off. If it's meant to be feedback, then we can see the feedback in it. And the
what
way
do you say?
I
What do
say
you say
scaling rejection.
somebody that? What do you say for somebody that can't receive the rejection but also can't receive the praise?
That's a tough one, because then for that person, they're going to have a hard time growing, because their mind's not going to receive the positive that says you're on the right track, keep going. And they're going to take the negative in a way that says stop and you're not cut out for this. But that's why scaling rejection is really good. And what I mean by scaling rejection is you just want to get as much rejection as you can. Like, get as much feedback as possible, whether it's good or bad. Because feedback, like I said, it hurts. Like, it stings. The brain can release some really unpleasant emotions. And because it's so unpleasant, we don't want to receive it. And because we don't receive it, it kind of stilts our progress. So if we can get If we can do things that allows us to get more feedback on a consistent basis, and preferably constructive feedback or negative feedback, the more we allow ourselves to get that hit of the rejection, the hit of the unpleasant feelings, and over time the brain learns, oh, this isn't so bad, I'm still gonna live. But we gotta go through it. There's no way around it. You can't, like, I can tell people, hey, don't worry about what anybody says. It doesn't matter. Let negative feedback roll off your back. I can say that, but you actually have to go through feeling the sting of the criticism and negative feedback over and over until you can get to that point. And the way to get to that point is by scaling rejection. And there's many ways we can go about doing that. One is going out to people we know and asking them for just brutally honest feedback about yourself. Like, hey, I'm trying to grow and I want to move forward and take the next step. Can you just give me some feedback of what you think of me and be brutally honest? And I mentioned that I'm doing 4 to 5 podcasts a week now. So at the end of every podcast, this is my exact line. Once the podcast is over and we're just having our final conversation, I will tell the podcast host, doing helps us learn, but feedback helps us grow. Can you give me brutally honest feedback about what I did or what I could do better? And some people have a hard time giving brutally honest feedback, which is why I make it very easy for them to do it. And then I get the feedback, and sometimes it stings. I've had a couple of podcast hosts say, you sounded a little scripted. And I'm like, thank you. And it was probably because because when I was initially getting on podcasts, the thought of just kind of doing a podcast without knowing what I was going to say seemed out of alignment for me. So I did think about a lot of the questions they could ask. I wrote out answers. I would repeat those answers. And so in the beginning, I was a little scripted. And so when I heard that, it was like, oh, it stung. Like, oh, you can tell I'm scripted. But it was an opportunity to help me become more natural and take the next step in doing it. So, but circling back, the way to kind of get over the pain of rejection or the unpleasant feelings of feedback is just to kind of receive a lot of it. And I kind of gave some tips on how we can do it. Some people are in a position like you are in, where you're doing a lot of social media. So you're already in what you're doing, scaling rejection. Because I was an author and I was getting a lot of reviews, that helped me scale the rejection. But there's other ways we could do it. Like I said, we can go out to people we know and ask them for feedback. Or we can show up on more stages or more places where we kind of expose ourselves, and then we get that feedback and it helps us to really move past that sting.
And like you said with your book, and just reading reviews and then feeding it back, kind of feeding back into it and republishing those sometimes negative comments or otherwise the positive comments, and just completing a feedback loop. For anybody who really wants rejection, just go out and try and start a business, because the first couple weeks is absolutely brutal, and then the first couple years is equally as brutal at times. But it really helps bolster that kind of acceptance of I see the flaws, I see the downside, I see what I need to improve on, and then it just helps you create a better product.
And then also trying to get clients.
Yeah,
they're always telling you, not right now, I don't have time. I'd love to do it. So, but it's one of the best ways to grow. In the beginning, it sucks. It's just so painful. But when you do get to the other side, almost always you're going to feel like, oh, I'm so glad I did it. Because there's a growth that happens that's just not possible any other way.
Yeah, I definitely agree in the, doing those things that you feel are going to get direct rejection. So something I've been doing, you watch a lot of my videos, and, I got to a point where I didn't miss a day for 100 days. And most of them were typically just, me looking at my phone, walking around, nothing crazy. And I decided to do something that I wanted to do something that kind of made me cringe, like, I don't want to put that out there. So I've been making some more funky videos lately, and haven't really gotten any negative feedback yet. But the fact that it's like I don't know if I should put that out there. I'm just like, all right, I got to put it out there, and it's helping me get more and more out of my comfort zone. And I feel, it might sound silly to some people, but for me, it's helping me grow. Just doing this thing that just makes me cringe, and just putting it out there.
I mean, one of the biggest keys and kind of like the successful advice I ever received is, a lot of people talk about dedication, being so dedicated to what you're doing. And you could be dedicated as you want, but it doesn't produce results. It's when you consistency and building repetitions time and time and time again, whether it be good feedback, bad feedback, maybe it makes you cringe. I'll be 100% brutally honest there. And you caught me off guard dancing online, but that's what it takes. And that's, it's an awkward place and not many people are willing to do that.
No, it's crazy. I do want to comment on your videos recently, Aaron. I have noticed, I'm like, wow, you're getting quite creative. And I was wondering where that motivation was coming from. But now it makes sense. You're just trying to get out of your comfort zone. And you made a really good point, Ryan. Being in the creative space, being an author, I get to meet a lot of creative people, whether they're authors or another creative endeavor, such as artists, musicians, and so forth. I cannot tell you how many talented people I meet and come across that you'll never know or ever discover because they're too afraid to put their work out there. And it's because it's 100%, although 99 people will say their work is fantastic, it's the fear of that one person who doesn't. It's so painful to them. It hurts so much that they will keep their stuff from the 99 people who would love it, just so they don't hear that negative feedback from the one person who doesn't. And go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, I have a contact I made on Instagram, like probably 12 or 15 years ago. He is a metal artist, and he posted one video of a fish that he sculpted. Now, he doesn't do just like a standard thing. He spends a lot of time on these. He posted one video years and years ago, and he completely blew people away by how much he was asking for it. And I remember the feedback that man had of, you're charging too much, it's not worth this, I would never pay to have that in my home. And then just recently I looked at his page, and he was selling or commissioning a piece of art that was very, 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 very expensive, and somebody paid that. And it was just, that willingness to keep driving through what everybody, the world is full of those negative comments, and it's honestly just better to keep it as fuel than it is to dwell over it.
And unfortunately, the people who are doing well, I don't even want to say unfortunately, but the reality is the people who are doing well aren't the most talented. They're just the ones who can handle the criticism and the negativity. And the more they put themselves out there, the more negativity they're going to get. But the more they put themselves out there, the more they're going to get noticed, and the more they're going to do well. In fact, as we're talking, I will share my own experience, because right now I'm talking as if like, oh yeah, this stuff doesn't bother me. But my first book I wrote, it was called Mind Tools. I had two people read it. One person said it was great, and the other person said it wasn't good. And I asked the second person who thought it wasn't good, I'm like, if you paid for it, would you have got value? And he's like, no. And that crushed me. I didn't put the book out. In fact, I actually forgot I even wrote that book. Only like a few years ago, when I was just kind of like putting together my story so I could talk about podcasts, I remembered, oh yeah, that was actually my first book. And because of that person's comment, I felt so, I don't know, I felt like it wasn't a good thing, that I didn't even want to admit to myself that I wrote it. And then because I didn't, I just put it in the back burner. Luckily, what I did do is I took 3 chapters from that book and I turned them into their own mini books, so 3 mini books. And then I put them up, I put that out there, and I did get feedback on that, which reinforced that, hey, I have something worthwhile to say. But prior to doing that, the book itself, even those 3 chapters, stayed dormant for years, a couple of years. So yeah, it's crazy.
So what's your piece, earlier you said about, people who are super talented, but you would never even know because they're just too scared to put themselves out there. They're too scared to show anybody their work. They're too scared to, pick up their instrument and play it in public. Things like that, that are just so stuck in that fear of getting rejected. How do you help somebody get out of that? Because I know for me, for a long time, I was the same way where I had an idea, but I could never imagine putting my face on social media and doing something silly. And here I am now, over 100 days deep, not missing a day.
Yeah.
What do you say to those people who are just so scared but have all this talent?
So I'm going to say a couple of things. One is, I mentioned that there's many reasons for resistance, right? One reason I kind of alluded to is the more sensitive we are to mistakes, so the more pain the brain releases when we make a mistake, the more resistance there will be. In light, or in a similar aspect, the more sensitive we are to the thoughts and judgments of another person, the more resistance there will be. Because if someone doesn't think what we did was great, our brain will release negative feelings. And because there's a potential for negative feelings to arise, resistance will say, oh no, doing this could create pain, so I'm not going to let you do it. So the more sensitive person is. Now, what's really important to understand is it's just feelings, it's just brain chemicals. So if we can understand what we're really resisting and fearing is just brain chemicals, sometimes that could be enough for a person to be able to push past their resistance, because they don't realize, oh wow, I'm really just resisting my brain releasing some chemicals if I am not judged the way I don't want, or there's a mistake. The second thing I would say is that, and you kind of alluded, no, I don't think you did, is not everyone is going to like your work.
Mm-hmm.
We live in a time where there's so many people and there's so many opinions and so many experiences that drive what people like or might not like. It's impossible. Even the most talented, most successful, the most educated person cannot get everyone to like their work. So it's just impossible. So, and the reason I bring this up is a lot of people go into a very heightened state of perfectionism because what they're trying to do is make their work or their product or their service or their art so perfect that no one can say anything negative about it. That's why we fall into
Makes
perfectionism.
sense.
Yeah. And those people will spend so much time making sure everything is perfect before putting it out. And guess what? Because it's impossible to not have everyone like what you do, someone's still gonna not like it. So there's no point in like wasting all that time falling into perfection.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think perfection isn't a bad thing. Like it's good to want to put out your best quality work, but you have to understand why you're doing it. If you're doing it because you're afraid of the judgment of that one person, then you're really limiting yourself. The third thing I would say is it all comes down to feelings. So the reason I've gotten to this point is because I've learned how emotions work, which is why I was able to give that insight that we're just fearing our own brain chemicals. Because even the first 2 answers I gave may not be enough for other people. Some people are still gonna feel the sting. And in that respect, is you guys have both experienced my work, which is tapping into the feelings and sitting with and feeling the feelings and not running away from it. And the more we can sit in the pain of people's judgments or the pain of the mistakes that we made, the more the volume turns down over time, to the point where there isn't much of a sting, if at all. And if the listeners here haven't picked it up, I'm all about trying to get to a point where we're not feeling as much sting, because trying to manage that sting, trying to manage the emotional pain, it's tough, it's rough. It's better not to have it. And the way to do that is, one, skill rejection, and two, learn to sit with and process feelings so they don't come up as strong.
Yeah, that sitting and processing your feelings, I mean, is just hands down one of the greatest things I've spent any amount of time doing, because you just think about, especially in today's world, we're just a go trying to stay up and keep up with things. Everything's so fast paced. We don't get to sit there and acknowledge that I was angry for nothing, or the fact that I was angry and it lasted 90 seconds and it disturbed my entire day, and I still don't know why. And there's a handful of those things that I think it is well worth every ounce of investment that we've taken to seek some of those things, and to also give us a good framework to work through it in the future, because it is going to be constant. It is going to keep coming. Most all of the days that we live, something is against us in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, you can't stop the emotions from releasing. We can help turn the volume down, and we can understand them enough where they don't affect us. But they are going to be there. And like you kind of said, Ryan, if we're not paying attention to it, we could be triggered by something that's minor or 90-second, but it kind of affect our whole day. And I'll take it one step further. If we don't realize or recognize it, it can actually get suppressed and start affecting us in a lot of ways beyond that day.
That's what I was just going to say. There's also that happy medium of, you also can't suppress them and completely push them away like I did for so many years, because that's not healthy either. So there's that happy balance of kind of accepting them and sitting with them for a minute, and then accepting for what they are and letting them go.
And if I can do a shameless plug for those listening, this is the work I do, and it's pretty profound. It's like releasing emotions, like 2 years of emotions in 2 hours. So if anyone's interested, kamknight.com.
Perfect.
Highly recommend it. Aaron did it first and then recommended it. And, you go into it with you got to go into it with an open mind, because if not, it's not going to work at all. And when you start going through some of these thoughts and feelings, and Cam spends, I think 2 hours is the minimum that he'll spend with you, just because he even says that your first hour is just getting into this unconscious mind, and then your next hour is opening it up, and then we got to deal with it for an hour or two after that. And it's eye-opening. And as somebody, I speak for myself here, I want to do big things, I want to do great things, but I am not doing them. Why? Something is holding me back, and it's not me. It is something in my head that is holding me back, and I don't know how to handle that, and I need to seek that. So highly recommend for anybody out there.
This stuff really is great, because if you don't know what's holding you back, we crack open the unconscious and we go there and you start to see it. And what's really interesting is a lot of our challenges and blocks are all because there's an emotional charge around it. And if we can release the emotional charge, then it becomes a lot easier and more smoother to move through the things that we're afraid to move through.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we're winding down on time here.
Wow, is it almost an hour? That's crazy.
I know, time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, this is good.
What's your one piece of advice? Your best piece of advice to somebody who's just stuck at the moment and don't know if they should make a left turn or a right turn, and they need some guidance, some quick guidance of, they should go left or they should go right in their life.
Okay, I haven't been asked that question, so give me just a second to think about it. The one thing that came up for me as you asked that question is one of the first books that I had written when I was in my journey of learning about personal development and really getting into it And I think it's a really good book still, even though it's been around for several decades. It's Susan Jeffers' book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyways.
Mm.
And in that book, she has a chapter that talks about no-lose decision making, how to make decisions where, there's no negative. And what she says is both decisions are great. Like, there's going to be a lot of learning and growth in both. And if you do make one decision and you realize it isn't what you really wanted, that's fine, because it actually did help you build some skills that's transferable that you can use
Mhm.
on the other direction. And when I first read that book, and specifically that chapter, it really helped me, because back then, I was a lot more intense. We talk about emotions. Like, the reason I got into this stuff is because I needed it to get from where I was to where I am now. And I would get really hung up on decisions. It would consume my awareness, and I waste a lot of time on it. But once I realized, oh wow, like there is no wrong decision. Whatever decision you choose, there's going to be opportunities for growth, and wherever it takes you, it's still going to be good if you can kind of shift your mindset and look in the positive. And so that definitely did ease things for me. And I can't say I full heartedly am in alignment all the time, because there are still times where I get anxious,
Sure.
but I am so much more at ease when I face those things of like, should I do this or should I not? But one thing I would add to what she'd offered is that's helped me is I always err on the side of growth. So like when you were talking about how after 100 days of videos, you want to take it to the next level because you wanted to, get out of your comfort zone. And you probably were faced with that decision. Do I do these things
Mhm.
and face embarrassment, or do I not? Well, the option was, if I do it, I'm going to get growth. And so usually if I'm faced with a decision, almost always, I'm usually picking the one that's going to create opportunities for growth, or help me become more solid in who I am, or help me push past my insecurities even more.
Excellent. I love that response. And, just to title that book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyways. I mean, that's kind of exactly what you just touched on with my videos is I've gotten in this habit of, something scares me, well, I do it anyway.
You gotta
And
do it.
then, the concept of there is no right or wrong decision, Ryan and I have touched on that a few times through our podcast. And it's a very profound thing that at the end of the day, there is no right or wrong decision. It's all just a
Yeah.
learning experience.
Yeah.
You can go make that left turn and find out it wasn't the right turn. And, you had a learning experience along the way, turn around, go back that other route,
Yeah.
or go off into a new why.
Yeah. And that's what I've
Even with
learned.
the
Go ahead, right?
even with the the talk we had about perfectionism, or just this fear and emotional hang up that we feel stuck, one of the best things you can do is just do something and deal with it after you do it.
Yeah.
That's it's a really good move, is just go make a decision, just don't be
Yeah.
indecisive about it.
Yeah.
The
More or less.
indecision is a bigger holdback than anything.
Yeah. More or
Mhm.
less, err on the side of taking action. So that's what I always do is, if I'm deciding, it's like, okay, I'm going to err on the side of taking action, and then I'll err on the side of the action that'll give me growth. So,
Cool.
yeah.
Yeah, I definitely feel that, that indecision. I think that's probably one of the worst decisions. Still not the wrong decision, but indecision of not doing anything. That's
Yeah.
where the biggest hang up is, just
Yeah.
sitting there and not doing anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, just go with something and work it.
Yeah. More or less. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if we can just, since we're still talking about it,
Yeah.
it kind of goes back to what I was saying. The more sensitive we are to the pain of mistakes, the more resistance there is. So if we are kind of caught between a decision, more than likely there is this fear that we're going to make a mistake, and that mistake is going to lead to the brain releasing unpleasant feelings, right? So the more, whichever decision releases more unpleasant feelings, the brain is naturally going to want us to avoid that decision. But if we can come from that perspective, at the end of the day, if the mistake is just feelings and it's just brain chemicals, then really there's nothing to worry about. Sure, certain mistakes can lead to wasting time or money and things of that nature. But a lot of our decisions, what we're really fearing is that we'll make the wrong decision and the brain will say you did something wrong and release unpleasant feelings. And if that's the case, then it's just feelings that you're worried about, and there's really nothing to really worry about.
I've talked to quite a few people that, my day job requires me to make some pretty significant decisions. Some decisions, you could make one wrong decision that could kill somebody. And I think in a lesser sense, where we're just trying to live life and we become indecisive and we try and talk about what to do next, having a plan, if you can't figure out what to do and you can't really, make a decision, make a plan and think, ahead quite some time. Maybe it's a year, 5 years, 10 years, or 50 years, and start working back to where you want to be. And that will often bring enough clarity. And if not even that much, just start writing down thoughts, feelings, wants, needs, desires, feelings, emotions, all the things. Just having a real good game plan and a clear space of mind helps with making good decisions, or not even good decisions, making a decision that's favorable.
Yeah, no, 100%. I agree. One of my mentors early on used to say, if you're afraid of doing something, think about what could go wrong and then what you would do to get out of it. And once you kind of lay that out, a lot of times it makes it easier to do the decision.
Yeah, a lot of time those fears, all these things that we think are going to go wrong, and once you actually start and think about it, it's really not that bad.
It's like really not that bad. Yeah.
We just have this tendency to just completely blow all of these things way out of proportion. When you really stop and think about it, it's not that bad.
Yeah, it's not. There's actually, I know we're kind of almost near the end, but I want to.
No, we're good. We can keep going if you need to. Yeah.
Okay. This is a really good reason for resistance. One of the resistance that comes up is because the brain is processing all the things that is going wrong. And I have a really powerful story to share about this. So as I mentioned, I've traveled to over 100 countries. And it's kind of interesting, but there was a point where I used to be scared of traveling. In fact, I never traveled alone, and I was always trying to get people to come with me. And after really looking into and diving into the cause of the resistance, what I realized is that my brain was processing all the things that could go wrong. What if I buy the wrong flight, book it for the wrong date? What if I can't make it to the airport or I missed the flight? What if my luggage is lost? What if the hotel isn't nice? What if I'm pickpocketed, or worse, what if I'm robbed? So anytime we set out to do something, especially something new, the brain is processing all the things that can go wrong. And it doesn't tell us what it's processing or what could go wrong. Oftentimes, it just creates this impenetrable wall that we can't push through. And the more things that can go wrong and the more severe each thing is, the more it creates this impenetrable wall that we can't get through. And all we feel is this like inability to move forward. Oftentimes it can feel like intense fear, or it can just feel like we're pushing up against an invisible wall. And so in these cases, it really helps to just kind of talk through or write out why we're fearing it. And we'll probably uncover all these things that the brain was fearing. But when we really look at it, there's really nothing, it's probably not that big of a deal. And I have another story to share about this. So I've traveled to over 100 countries and I've driven to and through all of the continental US states. But there was a time where I was terrified of driving through small town America. That's because growing up, I watched movies like Psycho, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Kurt Russell's movie Breakdown. And when I dissected why I had a hard time traveling, road tripping through America, it was my mind was processing these things from movies I saw. Like, what if my car breaks down and I'm trapped in Bates Hotel and there's a guy with a chainsaw who kidnaps my wife? Like, that's how outlandish some of our processing is. But we don't notice it because all we do is feel just that resistance or that invisible wall. But when we do dissect it, we're like, oh, is this what I'm really afraid of? And once we can see that, or we can create a plan for how we would overcome it, then it becomes a lot easier to move forward. So that's another reason for resistance.
I'm glad you shared that because that is just so relatable. I can relate to those things on every level. It's just all this irrational stuff that is most likely never going to happen, but yet it consumes us, and it keeps us from doing all these amazing things.
Yeah, and
but
I'll be honest,
happy you pushed through it.
Yeah, and now I've driven, like I said, to or through every continental U.S. state, and I've never experienced any of that. In fact, people in small town America have been more inviting and helpful than I could have imagined. So, yeah.
And now he's flying across country lines to go get his teeth done.
Now I'm flying across country lines to make my smile even better.
Yeah.
Love it.
Power of growth right there.
Yeah.
Well, Kam, for anybody who wants to find you, find your books, where is the best place for people to look for you?
So I've got 3 free gifts for all the listeners who are listening to your podcast and made it all the way here. The first gift is I have a guide on how to end procrastination and sabotage. As you guys can tell, I don't talk about stuff on the surface level. It goes really deep into the psychology of why we procrastinate and sabotage. And they can get that guide. I have a guide called Prompt Engineering for Your Mind. So the brain was the original ChatGPT. And I help people use the brain like ChatGPT to help them move in better and more constructive directions, like instantly, just by asking the right questions. And then I also have a book called Beat Burnout, because we're living in a time where we're becoming a lot more overextended. And this book goes really deep into this guide goes into the psychology of what's causing our burnout and what they can do to beat it. So they can get all 3 of those guides on my website at kamknight.com.
That's amazing.
Cool. And I will plug all of that into the description of the video as well, so everybody can find it.
Yeah, cool.
So, is there anything else on your heart you want to share before we end it, or?
No, I've been on a really long journey with personal development. First, I got into it. It was fascinating. Then I was applying it and seeing there was more to be said. And then I started writing books about it. And then I developed this concept called internal resistance, which I have a course on. And then now I'm doing that one-on-one work where I help people go into their unconscious mind. And we do the work in their unconscious, especially around their emotions. And this is really kind of what I want to do at this stage in my life. So I would love for people who are interested in that one-on-one with me to reach out to me at mentor@kamknight.com to see how this could be helpful to them.
Cool. Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, Kam, I really appreciate you taking this time to spend with us, and it's been an excellent conversation. I always enjoy talking with you.
Yeah, this is great. I'm glad you had me on, and I had a chance to catch up with you guys again.
Yeah.
Yes. We do appreciate it and your wisdom, and I think we've got some questions and some new stuff to talk about, so we'll have to do it again.
All right. Yeah. Sounds good. I'm happy to hop on anytime.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Well, thank you much, Kam.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you for watching, everybody, and we'll catch you on the next one.